Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the Built to Last show. I have the incredible Alicia Cramer with us today. Welcome to the show, Alicia.
Thank you, Megan. Looking forward to getting
Alicia,
this.
oh yeah, I'm excited too. I was just telling Alicia before we press record. I love having guests on because it's selfishly it's an opportunity for me to learn. I'm Alicia. You might see me take some notes because I may be taking some notes on what you're going to share. I know that you are really going to bring the value. And, Alicia is an expert in all things mindset and overcoming limiting beliefs and the subconscious. And she's also a hypnotherapist, and she's been doing this for a very, very long time. So, Alicia, you've got you have worked with thousands and thousands and thousands of clients. So let's go ahead and dive in. I love hearing people's stories. What got you interested in doing this kind of work in the first place? What led you to go down this pathway as your career?
The turning point for me was in 2005, I was assaulted. I had post-traumatic stress disorder and I went on a pretty deep healing journey. I knew I did not want to medicate myself. I knew that medication to dull the symptoms, it was not a long-term strategy because I had been into fitness and nutrition, and I was more of that alternative mindset to begin with. And early on in my teens, I struggled with very severe depression. So I went through all of the different types of antidepressants and nothing ever worked for me. So I knew that that was not an option. So then what was my option? Well, I remember digging through some of the books that I had, and like love him or hate him, Kevin Trudeau had a book called, what is it called? Um, it was about natural therapies, something like, they don't want you to know about it. And I remember looking in there at what are alternatives that I could use to help me to heal from the post-traumatic stress disorder. And so he's talking about all of these things like energy work and like all of these different types of modalities. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm game. And so I went online and I just started looking up all of these different alternative health practitioners that were within about a 300-mile radius of my home. And I just started booking stuff. I didn't have much money, didn't matter. Like when you're at that breaking point, you do what you need to do to survive. And that's pretty much where I was at. Well, it was very transformational, to say the least. And it wasn't an instant like, you know, there weren't angels coming down playing harps or anything like that, but it was really, really significant. And I was healing so much deep old stuff, really old self-esteem issues and self-confidence issues and self-worth issues. And obviously the fear that I was able to release and shift from the trauma, uh, I was moved and incredibly inspired. And I always was of the helping type. So for me, it just felt like this is what I want to do. And so I went and I got certified in a lot of different modalities, and I
Mm.
opened a little EFT tapping practice back in 2006. And that's really where it all began.
Wow, I love hearing that story. So, what modality do you practice the most? Do you practice hypnotherapy the most? Do you practice like equally all the modalities you're certified in? Like, which one do you practice predominantly?
It's such an interesting answer to that question because it is almost like a hybrid. So after having done so many different types of modalities and having worked with so many clients and testing and refining the methodologies for nearly 20 years, what I do is sort of a unique combination of everything. So I'm using a lot of conversational hypnosis, which integrates NLP. I'm actually using different energy processes where I'm able to raise my own vibrational frequency so that I am holding that energy for my clients. And that's why a lot of times my clients will say, I do the releasing processes that you teach me, and I do this and I do that, but nothing I do ever seems to get as good of results as when I'm doing it with you. And I always explain that's because I'm holding a very different frequency for my clients. And so we're using the conventional modalities like hypnosis and EFT and different releasing processes, which are all incredible in and of themselves. But when you find that sort of sweet spot, that balance where you're able to use the modalities more like a master contractor uses tools.
Mhm.
You don't say, I've got this hammer. This hammer is amazing. This hammer can hammer nails like nobody's business, and then think that hammer is going to build a house. The hammer in and of itself is only a tool. And that's the way that we want to treat modalities. They're tools, but really the craft of inner transformation allows you to take that tool, which in and of itself it has potential, but when you're able to take that tool and you use it in a very specific way, that's what creates such significant transformation.
Well, and I imagine obviously at this point, when you work with clients, you have your toolbox and you know which tool and which modality to pull out at the right time. I mean, you're a master at that. You can do that in your sleep. I love that. So I think where I want to go next, I want to spend a little bit of time on hypnotherapy. And the reason for that is because I do think hypnotherapy is becoming more up and coming. I'm seeing more people practicing hypnotherapy, but there's still a lot of misconceptions about it. People still think like, oh, I've heard people say this, oh, you're going to make me cluck like a chicken. No, I'm not going to have a session and make you cluck like a chicken. So I have a two-part question for you. Okay. Number one, unpack what is hypnotherapy? What is it? How does it function? How does it work? What is it working on inside of someone? And then the second part of that question is something that you mentioned a few minutes ago about you were going through your own healing journey. And something that I've noticed clients mention when they work with someone who's helping them through modalities like this, it's like what you said, like, it's not like the angels are coming down from the heaven and I'm having like this moment that I'm totally changed. And I think oftentimes that's what the expectation is. So a client comes in, they have this silent internal expectation that maybe they don't say to you when they hire you, but they do think we're going to have a session and I'm like going to be healed in that session. I'm going to know it and I'm going to feel it and I'm going to like tangibly be able to tell you how I know I was healed. So I'm also very curious, this is the second part of the question. How does a client know? Like, how can a client identify they are experiencing the healing process? What does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like to the actual client who's on the receiving end of your work?
Those are really good questions. So the first piece of that is, what is hypnosis? There are so many ridiculous misconceptions. There's so much fear around it, and it's very unfortunate because hypnosis is really just a process of accessing the subconscious part of our mind where we can create those shifts in our beliefs, in our behaviors. You can resolve past trauma and things like that once you're working at that level of the mind. And hypnosis is just a language-based modality, meaning we're using our understanding of how the mind works and symbolism and metaphors and analogies and different ways that we can induce the mind to go into an altered state, which doesn't mean that you are completely unconscious. It simply means that we've bypassed the critical faculty of the mind that blocks out stuff from going into the subconscious. Now, we go in and out of quote, quote, hypnotic states every single day. Every day. It's a natural process. What we're doing with hypnosis is we're just using techniques that we know can induce that state so that we can enter it for therapeutic purposes. A hypnotherapist, a hypnotist does not have special powers. Hopefully they are trained and, they have the experience to know how to handle a client when they're in that altered state. But the truth is, we will not accept suggestions that for instance, contradict our core values. So
Mm.
a lot of the fears are unfounded. And another big piece of this is when you see, and I say this all the time, when you see those people clucking like chickens, what a lot of people don't recognize is there's a small percentage of the population that is highly susceptible to that type of behavior in a hypnotic state. The mass majority of us are not. So if we were all sitting in the crowd at a stage hypnosis presentation, the majority of us would not be called up on stage because we are not demonstrating the signs to the hypnotist that we would be that perfect entertaining subject to pull up on
Mm-hmm.
the stage. So what does that actually mean? That means that the majority of us will not do the outlandish stuff, even if we're in a deep trance. We simply will not. It's incongruent with our self-image and who we are and the way that our mind works. Now, from a therapeutic standpoint, the misconception that really trips people up the most is they go into a light state of hypnosis. There's three depths to hypnosis, and the third depth actually has three sub depths, which means we can go
Wow.
deep, deep, deep. So that's where you're getting into things like hypnoanesthesia. So someone who is deathly allergic to anesthesia, they need they need surgery. What do? They work with a hypnotherapist to train their mind to go into that very, very, very deep state of hypnosis, different than sleep. If you were asleep and they go to poke you with that scalpel to cut you open, you're going to wake up.
Yeah.
All right. But for therapeutic purposes, we rarely ever want to go that deep. We want some degree of conscious awareness through the process so we can remember things like anchors to generate feelings of confidence or shifts that we have, an aha moment where we're able to sort of bridge a gap in our consciousness and have our own sort of healing shift or healing awareness. And so those lighter states, we're still in a heightened state of suggestibility, but oftentimes it does not feel like much more than a deep state of relaxation. Or we drift a little bit and the conscious mind drifts off, and you come back and you're like, was I asleep? What happened there? And when someone is going through the process of hypnosis and they feel like, oh, I heard everything and I was still thinking and my mind was still chattering, and they think, oh, it must not have worked. But I can't tell you how many times I've heard the story. Somebody says to me, I went to this hypnotist to quit smoking 20 years ago and it felt like it didn't work, but then I just quit smoking after that. Well, that goes perfectly into your second question. How do you know? Well, something about you has changed, and it's oftentimes after the fact, where you look back in retrospect and you realize, whoa, I did not react the way that I would have reacted in the past. I just went out and did that thing that I've been resisting. and fearful of. I just went and did it, and there was like no fear. And so the thing about inner transformation is we're just different. It doesn't feel like willpower. It doesn't feel like effort. It doesn't feel hard. That's how we know it's worked. Because in the past, if you had to exert will and you had to push through fear and you had to push through resistance, that means that there's subconscious programs that say, this is scary. I don't want to do this. I'm afraid of rejection. I'm afraid of failure. That's why it feels hard. That's why getting your ass to the gym feels hard if you're not aligned with it. If you have limiting beliefs that say, not me, it's not going to last, that's not who I am, I'll never lose the weight, it's too hard, I don't like exercising. But now let's say you clean that stuff up at the subconscious level of the mind, all of a sudden you find yourself at the gym every day. It doesn't mean you don't feel the exertion, or that some days you're not a little bit lethargic, and so it takes a little bit more intentionality to get yourself to the gym. But there's a change within you. You're thinking different, you're feeling different, you're taking different actions, and it almost feels like it's compulsory. It's happening automatically. And that's because our subconscious mind runs the show 95% of the time. And so if you're not doing what you want to do, it's because you got programs that do not serve you. If you are doing what you want to do, that's great. That means you've got programs that are helping you along on that path.
Okay. And I imagine out of all the clients that you have served, they don't all see results the same time as the other person. So some people may like talk to us a little bit about like, what's the timeline look like? Like, how long does it take before someone starts seeing significant changes in the way that they're being and what they're doing in their daily life? Like, how do we go from resistance because of the limiting beliefs and subconscious beliefs to like it becomes automatic? And I know that's different for everybody, but I'm curious.
It is different for everybody, and it's largely dependent upon how deeply the program is. And here's what I mean by that. We all have these experiences. There's areas where we'd like to make a change, and it's much easier for us to make the change. We don't have as many limiting beliefs. We don't have as much negative programming. Then we've got those other areas. Those are those lifelong struggles where we have been reinforcing our limiting beliefs and creating so many negative associations. So many different things trigger us. So much experience that seems to prove that limitation. When we're dealing with those types of issues, and that's really what this question is about, what about those really tricky ones? Because the other stuff, whatever, it might be a session, might be 3 sessions, maybe 6, right? But the tricky ones, the person who has struggled with weight their entire life, who struggled with scarcity their entire life, or who has such a strong negative belief about their worthiness or deservability, or if they're loving, those are the tricky ones. And oftentimes to have realistic expectations is kind of the first step. Same in any business, right? Does not matter what industry you're in, you've got to set realistic expectations. Because like you said, to your point earlier, you come in and you've got this unrealistic expectation. I'm going to hire this coach, or I'm going to hire this consultant, or I'm going to take this program, or I'm going to do this thing. And magically, it's just instantaneously going to completely transform my life, my business, my whatever. But if we're talking about realistic expectations, here is what I typically will say. Almost always, I would say 90+% of the time, a client will experience some degree of shift every single session. Some sessions will be much more significant than others. Sometimes a big chunk of negative emotion will rise to the surface. A lot of pain. Something happened, somebody's triggered, all of that stuff seems to come up. And we spend a lot of time doing the deep, heavy work where we're releasing and we're processing out all of that stuff that's right at the surface. Other times, the energy is much lighter. And then we're able to shift some of those core limiting beliefs just like that. It's like you're just popping them off. And that's exciting because that's when you really feel like, ooh, I can breathe. I'm lighter. I'm freer. I'm taking new action and I'm getting these results. And, I'll get a message, an email or a text from a client like literally within an hour sometimes of the session be like, you will not believe what just happened.
Wow. Yeah.
Right? That's amazing. And we all want that to be every single time, but that's not the reality because sometimes we do bump into something where it's heavy and it may require a couple of sessions to work through that. I'll give an example. Got a client who went through a lot of trauma, years worth of trauma. Her shifts have been amazing. And there's still a lot of pain that comes to the surface. So there are good days and then there are not so good days. And even though looking objectively, you can see how much growth and transformation has occurred in her life, when more of that heavy, painful stuff comes up, you're not objectively saying, oh, look how far I've come. You're saying, this sucks. Why do I have to keep, going through pain? And it's because we're literally starting to rewire who we've identified ourselves to be for years. So it is encouraging to know that transformation can happen very, very quick. But it's also important to know that this really is a lifelong journey. And you can go as far as you want to go. For some people, it's like, I just want to get over my fear of public speaking. All right, easy breezy, we can take care of that. Maybe 3 sessions, maybe 6 sessions. Every once in a while, it might even be 1. Just depends. But this literally, you can grow infinitely, exponentially. And so this is one of those things where it kind of just depends, it depends on the person.
Yeah. Okay. You're leading to my next question. Does it matter how open the subject is? The person. If I am more open to it versus closed to it or apprehensive or skeptical about it, if I'm more open, is it going to be more effective for me faster, perhaps? Is that a real thing?
Absolutely. That goes back to what I said before. No one can make you do anything against your will. So we are sovereign beings. That's one of the things that we all pretty much can agree on. You do not have to be religious or spiritual or anything, right? We can all say, I've got my own mind, my own identity. How I respond to things that I can't control is the only thing that really I do control, even though sometimes it feels like we don't have control. But that being said, it comes back to the understanding of how resistance works. So we can see this. Look at a child. If a child is resistant to trying a new food, how honest are they going to be about how delicious that food actually is?
Not very.
Not very, because they're trying to prove a point, even though it does not serve them. We're just grown children.
I was going to say, Alicia, we're like that as adults. I think that's
Yeah.
one of the reasons why, even as adults, they'll hang on to a story or a belief or a stance, even if it's not serving them, just because they don't want to be wrong or whatever. Oh my gosh, that just was like light bulb there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why one of the very first things I do with every client, and I teach it in my academy. When somebody comes into like my group program where there's all the on-demand resources, say, go through the introductions to processes first. One of the first things that I want every single client to learn is releasing exercises, because resistance literally is the obstacle to everything. Every
Mm.
transformation, every shift, every change in your identity, everything. When we dig our heels in, we are unwilling to move. We're unwilling to change. And so when we can begin to identify that it is fear that we're holding on to, and we can willingly begin to process that out, now we become open to a new way of thinking, open to a new way of feeling, open to a new way of being. And that's where all transformation occurs.
Love it. Love it. Okay. So there's something that I am so curious about. A lot of our listeners are business owners. I would say almost everybody listening to this is a business owner. I'd say predominantly coaches and consultants, although there are some non-coaches and consultants that listen to this show. And, I think we'll just call it a gripe. One of the gripes that a lot of business owners in the coaching and consulting field have is about their clients purchasing a program. Let's assume that the coach is great, the program is great, all the elements are there. Let's make that assumption. It's just not like a poor program. And one of the biggest gripes is, okay, you bought the program, you made a conscious decision to come here. You're an adult. You understand that in order to get the results that we're helping you get here, you are going to have to take action. And then there's a whole lot of resistance on the client side to taking the action. And I think this conversation that we're having, it's not the only thing, but it is one of the biggest factors: limiting beliefs, mindsets, past trauma, unhealed trauma. I think it's one of the biggest contributing factors to clients who are buying programs and they are not getting results because they're, quite frankly, either not taking action at all, or they're taking some action, like part-time action, or they have a very start-stop type of way of doing things, very inconsistent. And a lot of frustration comes up for the coach, for the business owner. Maybe they have 20 clients, 50 clients, hundreds of clients, and 20% of the clients are actually doing the work and getting the result. And I think where it becomes very frustrating for coaches, and anybody listening to this probably resonate with it. I've certainly noticed this over the years as well. You'll have this is the first time I really saw this pattern, is when I was the director of client success for a large scale coaching company. And I was on all the calls. I wasn't the one running the calls, but I was on them. And this was 10 years ago. I just remember this pattern I would notice. And at the time, this program only had 2 calls a month and they were 2 hours long. And it was about the same people every single call who would raise their hand and have dialogue with the coach. And I remember thinking at one time, gosh, this person comes to every call, raises their hand on every call. They get to talk to the coach every call, and they literally are repeating the same story every single time they open their mouths. And those people were never taking action and they were never getting results. And I think that becomes very frustrating, obviously for the client, but also for the coach. So can you shed some light on, as coaches running businesses, maybe it's a business coach, a health coach, a relationship, not a mindset coach, they do not have your expertise. How can we go about better serving our clients so that our clients are taking action and they are moving forward and they are getting results? Because I think this is a big problem in the coaching space. We don't all have your expertise.
So we're talking about deep-rooted subconscious programs. Those individuals who invest and don't take the action, don't get the result, it's not that they have some malicious intent to self-sabotage or to be a pain in your ass. They really genuinely do want the result on the conscious level.
Okay.
Subconsciously, they may feel unworthy. They may feel like it does not match their self-image. There could be a lot of fear. Maybe some of those actions trigger fear of rejection, feeling of inadequacy. Um, there's a lot of different insecurities that people are carrying around with them and really good at hiding. Meaning you can look at someone's online presence and say, shit, they look like they're just knocking it out of the park. When in reality, and I know this from personal experience, most aren't.
Mm,
So then how do you help your clients is really what the question is.
yes.
And here's the thing. One thing is, and I see this a lot, and it's no disrespect to anyone who's trying to do this because they're just doing the best that they can. They try to create a mindset module. They try to create some type of mindset piece of the program to address these things. Completely logical. The problem is, if you don't have the understanding, if you don't have the expertise, it oftentimes just creates more of that same feeling of, why isn't this working? Why aren't they doing it? I've given them all the stuff. And that's
Mm.
because a lot of this stuff, it's not just a turn that frown upside down and reframe that belief and push through the fear, and up leveling, requires that you step outside of your comfort zone. We've all tried that stuff. And maybe it worked like 5% of the time on those easy issues that we talked about. So then what I typically would suggest is helping your clients to understand that what they're experiencing, it's natural, it's normal. Finding a way to not blame or shame yourself, but also not blame or shame the client. Now, this is an interesting thing that
Mm.
I've seen over the years, and I'm sure you've seen it too. See people posting it on social media. Oh, my clients, they just, are not willing to do the work, and, they're kind of shaming people,
I see that a lot.
right? Well, that's ignorance. Because again, it's not that they're lazy in many cases. In fact, even laziness is a deeper rooted issue, and it's a very individual thing. They're avoiding something, they're afraid of something, and fear is paralyzing. And the subconscious mind's job is to avoid what we're afraid is going to hurt us. So we self-sabotage and we avoid and we find things like, oh, let me just make this adjustment to my website instead of making those sales calls. Um, so, encouraging them to explore their resistance, encouraging them to be honest with themselves about their fears. That's honestly why oftentimes for colleagues, I'll give them resources. I'll say, use this. I've got people who do enterprise packages from my academy, and they gift the academy to their clients. Now, not everybody's going to use it. Some people literally will self-sabotage and not even use the things that will help them. You can't control that. You can't force someone to do the work, but giving them the tools at least now puts them in the driver's seat. And now, I literally have done everything that I can do. I can't force anyone any more than I can force my child to eat broccoli if they are so opposed to it, right? I
Mhm.
can encourage, I can inspire, I can hold space, I can assure them that they've got all the potential inside of themselves and that they can overcome those fears, that self-doubt, those limiting beliefs. And then I just have to make peace with whatever they decide.
Mhm. Yeah, and I love that you brought up that there are coaches and enterprises and organizations that will essentially use your academy in their program so that their clients have access to it. I want to make sure we put that in the show notes, that opportunity for people to reach out to you, because you're exactly right. A lot of people, a lot of coaches, whatever they're coaching on, like non-mindset types of things, you're exactly right. They are bringing in an initial mindset module in the very beginning and are not really equipped to be coaching on that or teaching on that. And it's not helpful at all. And I think it's also sometimes very burdensome for the coach to think that they have to be the ones who are not equipped to be a mindset, we'll just call it a mindset coach, but yet they think they have to include that, because we all know that that's the biggest hurdle for everybody. But I think that's also pretty burdensome. There's something that you said, I was like laughing on the inside because it's so true, where we look at people on social media and we see their faces and they're on Facebook Lives and their brand photos and their content is everywhere and they're on podcasts everywhere. I mean, they're all over the place. And you really do think like they've got it going on. They are rocking it. And our assumption is that they're probably making millions of dollars. And then we start making assumptions about ourselves. So, and it is very true. I've also been behind the scenes of a lot of businesses, and what we think is based on the outside is not what is on the inside. And sometimes that means the P&L is not what you think it would be on the inside, behind the scenes. So for anyone listening to this who is experiencing or has been experiencing for quite some time a financial plateau, I think that is very common in the entrepreneurial world. The all common statements we might say to ourselves, I thought I would have been further along by now. I just have to keep working harder. And for a lot of folks, it's not a lack of action and effort. They're making the effort, just like you described. We think you're rocking it out there, but the finances behind the scenes are maybe no further along than they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago. They could be good, but they're not really inching along. They're not quantum leaping along. What role do limiting beliefs, subconscious beliefs, and mindset play in that? So speak to the person who is taking a lot of action and they're doing a lot and they have been for years, and the money is just not where they thought it would be yet.
Everything always comes back down to beliefs. So couple things, and I can't, I literally, I hear this so often, I would not even be able to give you a number of how many times I've heard this. I thought, I should be further than I am, right? I should be so much further than I am. There's a couple of different things that I want to address. And before I even get into some of the mindset shifts that can be very, very beneficial, I just want to say this to hopefully help people release some of the shame around this. And that goes back to what we were just talking about, appearances. Now, it's not even just that people sometimes put out the facade of success. We literally, and I've been in business now a long time, and I dabbled in internet marketing way back already in 2001. So I've seen this. We literally are sold bullshit and have been for years.
Say it like it is, Alicia.
So how many advertisements have you seen for the program that's going to get you to seven figures? The book that has the magic formula for writing $1 million copy that's going to take your business to the stratosphere. The program that's gonna you can listen to this audio and it's going to turn you into a billionaire. Like literally, like it's everywhere. It's everywhere. And so then this stuff is literally influencing you subconsciously. When you
Mm.
see something a lot, you begin to believe it, even if it's not credible, even if it's nonsensical. We know this. There are books written on it. There's an entire, psychology behind it. When you expose people to misinformation repetitively, it affects their subconscious beliefs. Now, here's the thing. If you're sold a lie, it's still a lie, which means you can believe that those programs must be making millionaires and all of those other people must be super successful because I see it everywhere, even if they're selling snake oil. Or it's just really good marketing. And once you actually get into the program, you're like, wait a second, this is exactly what I do in my business. And I just bought
Yeah.
this program from this guru who was in my industry. And I thought I was going to learn something. And wait a second, what the hell just happened here? Must be me. It's me. It's me. It's me. And this is where we now get into our own limiting beliefs and how our own limiting beliefs become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because now you've taken the programs, you've bought the things, you're taking the action, you're doing all the stuff. And if you're still not getting the results, if you start to uncover the beliefs that you have, what you begin to recognize is if your beliefs become a self-fulfilling prophecy, meaning your beliefs about your worthiness, your beliefs about your capability, your beliefs about how much money you can earn, beliefs, is it spiritual for me to be receiving money for my
Mm.
gifts, right? I mean, there's so many of these common things that the majority of people have to varying degrees. Now you start to uncover this stuff and you begin to recognize, oh man, I don't believe that I can achieve that goal. I don't believe that I have the ability to earn that amount of money. I don't believe that my marketing is good enough. I don't believe that people want to buy from me. And what you begin to recognize is your beliefs are directly contradicting your goals.
Yep.
And that causes us to inadvertently, in many cases, self-sabotage. So you put out the marketing and you do the advertising, and somebody sends you a DM and you're like, oh, it's just a spammer. And so you blow them off or you're rude to them. And it just so happened to be somebody responding to one of your ads or your marketing. And so what ends up happening is that damn self-fulfilling prophecy, it's gotta do its thing. The subconscious mind, it's got to prove its beliefs. So then, even if it's not actually true that you're incapable, you'll create circumstances that seem to justify that belief. Even if you could ask for more money and receive it, you may not be able to even get the words out of your mouth. Or if you do, there's so much weird energy there that the other person doesn't even understand why they just walked away from the opportunity to work with you. And so this is why we want to get in and get really self-honest about what's going on in our subconscious mind so we can start to clean that stuff up. Because oftentimes we are actually self-sabotaging and keeping ourselves stuck at that plateau.
Mm. Wow. This is so good. Alicia, I'm listening to you. I'm like, this has been such an informative conversation. And my hope is that people have a new level of awareness around these subjects that you've been talking about. And the other thing I really love about your approach and how you articulate this work, it's very easy to understand you. And I think that a lot of folks in this that represent the mindset industry, it's difficult to understand, right? But I love how you do such a good job of meeting people right where they're at but just using language that is and examples that are really easy to understand. It doesn't sound scary. It doesn't sound insurmountable. Like, you make things sound like very hopeful and very possible. And I hope that our listeners feel that way too. I have a feeling that they do. I know that you have a lot of additional resources that people can access. So tell us about those resources if people want to dive deeper into this and get off the plateau that they've been on for a while.
The best way to start to immerse yourself in the resources is to go to my website. There's links to my YouTube channel. We have obviously my podcast. I know you'll be guesting on the Mind of Business Success podcast. We have Uplift Conversations with Visionaries. There are hypnosis audios. There are EFT tapping videos. There are mindset trainings. All of that is freely available to everyone. My Money Mindset Intensive program is currently available for free on the website. So if you go to aliciacramer.com, you can opt into that. It's regularly $600. I am giving that program away for free. There are multiple reasons for that. And the big one is because literally this is the biggest issue that I see.
Wow.
And so that program is literally intensive. Contrary to what the marketers would say, they say, do not overwhelm people with your freebie. Well, I'm going to overwhelm you because I want you to actually make a change. And so what we do is we get into processes where we start to identify what is going on in your subconscious mind. And then I teach you processes to help you to shift that. So that is available on the website. Information about working with me privately is on the website. And of course, information about the Academy, which is on demand. Hundreds of mindset reprogramming audios, not intended to be overwhelming. We have a client support concierge who will hand deliver, use this one for that challenge. You say, hey, got imposter syndrome. Oh, we've got these and that for you. But we do a lot of live stuff as well inside of the Academy. So all of that stuff is available, accessible to learn more about at aliciacramer.com.
Amazing. Well, I'm going to go check out those resources. So if anybody wants to join me in checking those out, make sure you head your way over there to aliciacramer.com. That is in the show notes. I do have one follow-up question for you because if anyone's thinking of this, I want to know the answer and be able to give it to them now. If someone is running a coaching program and they're interested in providing your academy to their clients, in order for them to do that, do they have to have gone through the academy themselves? Are there any prerequisites to that? Or could they reach out to your team, have that conversation, and then make that happen?
Yeah, you do not have to go through the academy. I recommend you go through the academy. I recommend you use it as well. But no, you do not have to. You reach out to myself or my team, and we can give you information about Enterprise Academy memberships. You get a significantly discounted rate, and that allows you to grant access to the basic academy level to your clients, your customers. It really is designed to be a win-win. And because we give you access for your clients, you also get access. So if you're thinking that this is something that could potentially help, reach out. We'll give you more information.
Okay, excellent. All right, folks. Well, we all have limiting beliefs. We all have subconscious beliefs that are holding us back from our greatest potential. And there are no excuses, no excuses. You have all the resources that you could possibly need at your fingertips. So go check out Alicia and her website where you can find all those resources. Thanks so much, Alicia. This was incredible.
Oh, thank you, Megan.
All right. Until next time, remember to design a business and life that is built to last.